Hi, I'm Andrew Lowe, and thank you for clicking on this video of a celebration for Svetlana Sussman that took place at MIT on Tuesday, May 21st, 2013. Svetlana was diagnosed with colorectal cancer in 2011. And in 2013, when it became clear that nothing more could be done, she decided to stop all medical treatments and enjoy the time that she had left with her family and friends. Those family and friends decided that we should throw a party in her honor to celebrate her life with her. We did this so that we could tell her what she meant to us, rather than waiting until after she was gone and telling each other at a memorial service. That's what you're about to see. Now, for such a personal event, you might be wondering, why videotape it? And why post it publicly now, 10 years after the fact? Two reasons. The first is that we wanted to tell everyone, especially Svetlana's husband Harris, her son Leo, and her grandson Tigran, what kind of person she was and how many lives she's touched. Tigran was only 2 years old at this event. Now that he's 12, he should see his grandmother through the eyes of the people she affected. Second, Svetlana was always looking for ways to help others, particularly those that weren't in a position to help themselves. So if this video can help you deal with a loved one who's dying, if it can help you reduce the stigma around the subject of death, and if it'll motivate you to celebrate their life with them and tell them how much they mean to you before it's too late, well, that would be the greatest way to honor Svetlana's memory. Svetlana Sussman died on June 7th, 2013, at home, 17 days after this celebration, surrounded by people who love her. I believe this event brought her some comfort and peace during those last days. And I hope this video will do the same for you and your loved ones. Thank you for watching. I'd like to welcome everybody to the MIT Faculty Club and this celebration with Svetlana Sussman. I want to also welcome Svetlana's family, her husband Harris, her son Leo, her daughter-in-law Mashid, and her grandson Tigran. I have the honor and the responsibility of being the MC for the celebration this evening. So let me begin by explaining the origin of this event. And let me apologize in advance for being a bit direct in some of my remarks, but I think that it's probably the best approach for this particular occasion. As all of you know, Svetlana has been dealing with cancer for quite some time now, and as with many types of cancer, after a time, the treatments are no longer effective. And more aggressive therapies would end up significantly reducing the quality of life, so Svetlana decided to stop further treatment so she could enjoy the time she has left with her family and friends. And one of the things that she said she likes to do is to feed people and let them have a good time, spoken like a true Jewish mother. So that's why we're here tonight, to share a nice meal with Svetlana and her family, to celebrate with her, and to embarrass her a little bit by telling her how much she's accomplished throughout her career at MIT and beyond. Now, I realize that this can be a difficult thing to do under the circumstances, but part of that difficulty has to do with the fact that the subject of death and dying is still taboo in our society. And I want to encourage all of us to get over it so we can get on with some honest dialogue. And the one thing that all of us have in common, whether you're faculty or staff or student, Democrat or Republican, male or female, rich or poor, white, black, red, yellow, or green, the one thing we have in common is that for each of us, our days here are numbered. Someone once said that life is a sexually transmitted disease and it's 100% fatal. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. But this is what makes life precious and worth celebrating, and our mortality is also what unites us in the common bond that we call euphemistically the human condition. Once we start talking about it plainly, directly, and openly, we remove a lot of the stigma and the fear, and this is particularly important when we're dealing with a friend that has little time left. Now, I have to admit that I only came to this new perspective relatively recently when the donor of my chair, Charles Harris, died 3 years ago. And he approached this situation with incredible courage, rationality, and even good humor, much like Svetlana has. And from talking with Charles during this time about his experiences with friends and acquaintances, I learned a number of things about how to interact with a friend who's terminally ill. So let me tell you what my few insights were. For example, when visiting that friend, do not spend your precious time sobbing uncontrollably, because your friend will then have to comfort you, which is both ironic and annoying. Don't avoid seeing or speaking to your friend because it's awkward and you don't know what to say. You'll figure something out, and what you say is not nearly as important as just being there. I think it was Woody Allen who said that 90% of success is just showing up, and I think that's an underestimate. Don't take it personally if your friend isn't able to see you when you want. Talking about weighty issues is emotionally draining sometimes, and your friend will need a break. Email is a great way to support your friend because she can read them at her own pace and reply when she's able. But don't expect a reply, and most of all, don't send anxious emails asking, did you get my previous message? She probably did get it, but has not had time to respond because of the hundreds of other messages. And one last observation is really something that came from Charles Harris's wife, Susan. Charles put together a blog so he could update his friends and family on his condition periodically. And at some point, he was no longer able to update the blog, so his wife, Susan, started filling in for him. And she was writing in one of her entries about hospice care. And this is what she wrote. Hospice care is a holistic approach to caring for the dying, and one of its basic tenets, attributed to Ira Byock, a leader in the hospice and palliative care field, is that to die peacefully, one must have exchanges with significant people in one's life that involve, if appropriate, 5 statements. I forgive you. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And goodbye. Charlie has received so many beautiful emails and letters incorporating the last 3 of these sentiments, and they are bringing him peace. Thank you to all of you who have written to him. How much better for him to hear these things now than for those left behind to discuss them at a memorial service. So let me get the ball rolling tonight by getting the first 2 of these 5 statements out of the way, at least for my part. So first, Svetlana, I forgive you for not allowing me to install a freestanding air conditioner in my office. And it's really hot. By the way, Bob Merton and Roberto Rigobone also forgive you. Second, Svetlana, please forgive me for trying to install a freestanding air conditioner in my office. As for the last three statements, that's what this evening is all about. And so I want to propose two ground rules for the speakers. We have a number of speakers speaking throughout the dinner tonight. Each of you will have 3 to 5 minutes to speak, so please don't go over that, otherwise I'll have to pull you off the podium. Second, if any of you start bawling and making the rest of us sad, I may have to give you a timeout in the back and then ask you to hug this teddy bear that I brought. When my younger son got sad, he loved this teddy bear. He would cry into it, and it would make him feel better. So if any of you start crying, you're going to have to grab onto this and hold on to the Tigran, you're exempt from this. So with that, let me introduce the first set of speakers. We're going to have 3 speakers who are MIT colleagues of Svetlana, and then we'll continue on with dinner and the main course, and then afterwards, we'll continue with our program. So first, I'd like to ask Donna Bamer, Senior Associate Dean for Finance and Administration, to come up and say a few remarks. Donna?
So thank you, Svetlana, for giving me the opportunity to share some pride and maybe embarrassing moments about you and your career at MIT Sloan. And it's also a real privilege to be able to share them not only with you, but with your colleagues and with your family. You've touched our lives in so many ways, and we want to share with you some of those very special moments. As many of you know, I don't delete emails, and so in preparation for this evening, I sorted by Svetlana's name, by year, and pulled up some interesting emails. Now, if you're listening really closely, you might hear these things more than once, because we've a little bit conferred 5 minutes ago and found out that we've called up the same email messages. So I'm not the only one guilty of not deleting. So the first one I found was June 16th, 1999 at 5 o'clock. And it says the following: I'm writing with a special plea. Svetlana's been temping since February 17th, 1999. She's done a superlative job. We're very eager to hire her. Her computer skills are excellent. We greatly need this. She learned scientific word in a day. Let's see. Her experience is impeccable. I know she'll end up being a valued MIT employee. I sincerely hope it will be at Sloan EF&A. And that's just a beautiful example of the value that you created in just the few short days that you were with us. Another email came just minutes later, as things often do when people campaign for a hire. And this one came from a faculty member who said, Donna, she's highly educated. She's got a great technical background. She figures things out that I can't. I'm designing a new first-year course in finance in the spring. I really need her. So needless to say, we jumped at the opportunity to hire Svetlana. And we just love every moment since that time. She's always been very humble. There were times when she had to figure out a title to put to reference her contributions. She always picked the most humble title, despite some of Andrew's desires. She's always had great skill and good humor. Back in 2001, she was struggling with some renovation or move or whatever. And I got another email, and it says, in addition to supervising the move, Svetlana worked to keep all of us involved. She calmed our nerves, she solved our problems, she assumed responsibility and executed without a glitch, and she did it with good humor. And that's just another classic Svetlana example. She's also been a super appreciative person, and so from time to time she would stop by my office and ask for advice on what she could be doing to improve herself. And we'd talk for a few minutes, and within hours I would get an email back with so much appreciation for the time that we spent together. Just unbelievable, Svetlana. Other characteristics from many, many emails. She takes initiative in critical situations. She's a true leader among the staff. She executes in an exemplary fashion. Always good cheer, always enthusiasm, capable of doing so much more than what we've given to her. These are just beautiful examples, and I hope you're embarrassed by all this praise, because we mean all of it. Her dedication is commendable. She's always been an advocate for faculty, staff, and students. She has avoided catastrophes. Some of you may know some of those stories. She's always been an advocate, raised morale, raised good spirit, and just been a pleasure to work with. So let me close in saying, wait, one more. She seems to be an expert on visa processing, for those of you who have benefited from that. And when I went to see her last Thursday, what was she doing? Visa processing. So let me close in a little bit of a personal note. You've been an unbelievable joy to work with. A kind person. During the events in April in Boston, I touched base with Svetlana, and what did she say? I care so much about the people that I work with. I'm trying to get in touch with all of them to make sure that they're okay. And that's exactly who she is. I can see from your adoring eyes what a proud mother you are. That look is unmistakable. Watching your son play is just another example of a wonderful person that you are, a proud grandmother, and a friend to all of us. So thank you for the privilege of being able to work together.
Thanks, Donna. Next, we have Mary Marshall, the Associate Director of the Sloan Fellows Program. And Mary was in Svetlana's current position when she hired Svetlana, I believe. Right, Mary?
It was a lot smaller at the time, so it wasn't exactly the same position, I would say. I am truly honored to be here this evening to celebrate with Svetlana and with Harris. Harris, who is a Sloan spouse, who has always taken pride and pleasure in Svetlana's career at Sloan and in EF&A. And with Leo, who has generously shared his brilliant talent with Svetlana's Sloan friends in many venues over many years. I'm glad to say I've been a member of the audience a number of times, and it's always memorable. And also to be with so many EF&A colleagues. I left EF&A 12 years ago, but I've never really left EF&A. And it's in the kind hands of Svetlana, so it's been a wonderful place to visit. EF&A folklore, and I believe it was mostly started by Svetlana, has it that when she applied for a position assisting finance faculty back in 1999, I perused her resume and I wisely said, "You are overqualified and won't stay here very long." To which Svetlana simply replied, "I just want to work." Some of this is going to sound a little like an echo. I prefer to think that what I really thought and said was better captured in an email I sent to Donna Bamer at the time. It began, "I am writing with a special plea," I believe I underlined that and made it bold, "to do everything we can to make a successful job offer to Svetlana Sussman." And it ended with, "I know Svetlana will wind up being a valued MIT employee. I sincerely hope it will be in a Sloan EF&A job." And that's just what happened. Svetlana, thank you for taking the EF&A job in 1999, excelling at it, seeking a promotion, and then another promotion, and then another, for being always a valued MIT employee, and for guiding so many others to do the same. I know I will continue to learn from your gentle grace, embracing warmth, intelligence, and commitment for years to come, and I treasure you for that, and love you. Treasure you and love you. Thank you, Svetlana.
Hi, Svetlana. You may have to get the hook out because I'm going to be here for a while. Last year, Svetlana won a Sloan Excellence Award for her great work as an AO and manager for EF&A. I think a lot of people know that. So I'd like to go through and explain some of the reasons why I think that she's the best supervisor, manager, and administrative officer ever. Svetlana has classic and progressive leadership skills, and she encourages us to embody these skills as well by her example. She takes great pleasure in watching admin staff in EF&A rise to leadership roles. She's always encouraging us to take on challenges that she believes and knows we can be successful with. She's the best manager I have ever worked for and with. She really cares about her staff and wants to see every one of us succeed. But more important, she wants to see every one of us enjoy succeeding at our job. She enjoys her job and she succeeds at it, and she wants that for her staff. She always has a smile on her face, and by her example, so do we. We work as a very well-oiled team in EF&A, and that is all due to Svetlana's influence. From the day you start in EF&A, you know you are part of a team. You see that people care about each other and care about doing a good job and supporting each other to get the work done. It's something that is so solid in our daily routine because Svetlana has trained and continues to train each of us very well. And she reminds us all the time about how we are a team, how we can support each other, and how valuable we are as individuals and as a group. I often think about what it is that makes Svetlana such a good manager, because I'm always telling people what a great job I have and what a great supervisor I have in Svetlana. A lot of it is her patience and compassion for everyone. A lot of it is her organized, supportive way of teaching and training us, but the heart of it is how much she cares about us and supports us. We want to do a great job because she's raised the bar, but in such a caring, dedicated, and passionate way, we all rise to the occasion in our work. Here's an example of how Svetlana makes us feel like a team. When a new staff member is hired, at the first staff meeting they attend, they are asked to tell the group something that other people might not know about them. I think it is a brilliant tactic on a few different levels. Sharing a secret with the group breaks down a barrier that a new person might have with a group of people that he or she doesn't know yet. And making the group privy to a secret helps us all feel that we, this special group, know something that nobody else knows about our colleague. And it makes us all feel closer together as a group, more willing to work together, support each other, and have fun along the way together. Svetlana expects us all to function at a high level in our job. She sets that example herself by being an incredible senior administrative officer. We see her doing great work, and it encourages us to do it too. We know that she has our back at all times. We totally trust her to have our best interests, and she has shown us time and time again that she does. She looks out for everyone on staff and encourages people to pursue their interests, inside and outside MIT. We trust her because she has earned our trust. She encourages us on a regular basis to attend MIT and Sloan events. It's an important part of our annual review that we show how much we are participating in the wider Sloan and MIT communities. I find that remarkable because I hear from colleagues outside Sloan that many managers are loath for their staff to leave their desks. Just another example of how Svetlana trusts us to get our work done while enjoying all the good things that MIT has to offer. I think the hardest part of a supervisor's job might be conflict resolution with staff, but of course, Svetlana makes that look easy. She never lets things simmer. She never procrastinates solving problems when we encounter them. I have learned so much from her, and I appreciate this part. She makes it easy to discuss difficult issues in the office. That takes the fear out of dealing with them. That creates an atmosphere where it's okay to make a mistake, because everybody makes mistakes sometime, and it's not the end of the world. You cannot imagine how refreshing that is for support staff, because, again, that is not exactly the norm at MIT. We get regular positive feedback from Svetlana, including at every monthly staff meeting. She wants us to report our successes to the entire admin team at those meetings. Years ago, MIT President Chuck Vest started a campaign against MIT being a no-praise zone. He should have had Svetlana leading that project, because if he had, it would have been all across campus by now. Svetlana is very mindful of the role that morale plays in the workplace. Morale is very important to me too. The thing with positive morale is if you don't have it or your group had it and lost it, it's really hard to get back. It's invisible, but essential to running a successful team. I can vouch for the fact that our EF&A team has very good morale. Thank you, Svetlana. And if you won't take credit for everything that I've said, at least take credit for knowing how to hire a great staff. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to have dinner now served, and then we'll continue with remarks after dinner. Thanks.
Cool. I love it. No, don't touch that. Don't touch that.
In here, in here, in here.
So we'd like to hear more from three more colleagues from MIT of Svetlana's. So next up is Anita Horn, who's a systems analyst in STS. Anita?
So I met Svetlana when she first got here, and I probably set up her computer, but I can't remember exactly what happened. But I definitely met her, and then not long after that, I found myself planning for a trip to Omsk, Siberia. So, of course, I went directly, well, actually, I don't know if I went directly to you. I'm not sure if I remember this correctly, but I signed up for this class at Cambridge Adult Ed for Russian, and I don't know whether I showed up and you were there or whether I noticed your name. I think I might have noticed, oh, that name looks familiar, and it was Svetlana who was teaching it. So I was like, score, you know? She was right there. So we bonded early on over Russian language and Russian everything. And she taught me a few key phrases. The only one that I remember is "Я не говорю по-русски," which means I don't know Russian. And that she chose that one because I don't understand Russian is a lot more difficult to say. So she chose the simplest thing for me. So you know, over the years we've bonded over, you know, translating things. She's translated things for me, and you know, talking about. I think you told me one time that you were part of a group, like a secret thing, you know, for Russian novels that people couldn't publish, and you would hand them off, you know, and I thought, oh, wow, that's so cool. So, and then, I had read about that, but I had never met anybody who had actually done it. So, and then there was our work relationship. And you know, Svetlana is just wonderful to work with because she's like to the point. She's, you know, get down to business. She knows exactly what she wants. You know, she's so easy to work with. And then she's always got that smile and laughter. You know, she laughs every time you get together with her. There's something to laugh about. And I loved hearing her laugh. And you know, and Mary mentioned the grace, and you know, she is the epitome of grace. Everything about her, you know, her movement and just the way she goes through life. It really, I mean, I've learned so much from you, and in your, you know, I've known you through your, you know, since you were one of us, and now you're, you've climbed the ladder. And it's really been great to just watch your progression and watch the way you do things. It's been wonderful. So of course, when we were getting together, I don't know if you've seen it, but they were taking some pictures and having, maybe it's a secret, but anyway, we had to write something, and I decided to write something in Russian, but of course I couldn't ask you, so I had to go to Google Translate. So I wrote it and I did it, and then I thought, you know, I should probably check this with somebody. So I checked it with this Russian student, and he was like, huh? So when you see that, you can just laugh, and that'll be a cute thing. So then I said, well, how do you say that? And so he actually sent it to me, and hopefully I can pronounce it, but it's Paka Moibstre Timsiensnova. Well, it's supposed to mean until we meet again.
So, Leonid, is that what it means? Did you say it right? Okay, good. Okay, next we have Joe Weber, who's the George Maverick Bunker Professor of Management and the academic head of the Economics, Finance, and Accounting Group. Joe?
Thank you all for allowing me to share some stories about Svetlana this evening. A few things. First, I get very nervous, and you'd think I wouldn't being a faculty member, but I do get very nervous talking in front of audiences, so I apologize if I'm a little nervous. I also embarrass very easily, so I'm going to turn red sometime in the next 5 or 10 minutes. I won't be 10 minutes, Andy. You're not going to have to pull me. But I will turn red because I'm going to embarrass myself. So I have 2 stories for you. One story occurs around May 2007. So in May 2007, I got tenure. And it was a wonderful experience. Everybody was like, yeah, Joe, congratulations. It's great you got tenure. And then probably around June 1st, 2007, SP came into my office. Well, now that you're tenured, you're going to be the head of the accounting group. And I was like, oh, I don't know if this is good or bad. So I took over, and at that time, Svetlana was the head of EF&A. And so I said, all right, I'm the head of the accounting group now. I got to try to follow in SP's footsteps. And SP had a tradition, it has had a tradition, so for all the years that I was in the accounting group, every month, not even every month, every 2 weeks, the accounting group would go out and we'd have a happy hour on Friday nights. I'm starting to turn red. So, at the end of the happy hour, SP would always say, guys, don't worry about it, I'll pick up the tab. And so for years, I thought SP was running the tab through EF&A and was just like, oh yeah, we go out, we go for drinks, and the school pays for it. No, that's not what actually happens, right? So I take over as the accounting group. The first time we go out, we managed to spend about $250. There's 5 of us. No, it wasn't that bad, but it was. We go out, we spend a non-trivial amount of money. I walk back, and I'm like, all right, don't worry, guys, I'll take care of it. And they're chanting, Joe's great, this is fantastic. So I go in the next day, and I submit the bill to my admin assistant. My admin assistant sends it up to Svetlana, and I get a call. Svetlana says, Joe, this is all alcohol. I said, I know, Svetlana, we went out for happy hour. She says, we can't pay you for this, Joe. And I said, what do you mean you can't pay me for this? SP's been doing this for years. And Svetlana says, no, you can only have about 30% of the tab to be alcohol. The rest has to be food. Now, I can't believe this. And I say, Svetlana, this can't be true. She's like, well, I'm going to look the policy up on my own. I don't believe you. She says, okay, Joe, go ahead. So the wonderful thing about Google, I go Google, and lo and behold, Svetlana's actually been generous with 30%. So I have to go upstairs and say, Svetlana, you're right, and I'm wrong. So I go upstairs, my tail between my legs. I knock on her door. This was when we were in E52. She opens her door, and there's a big smile. I said, I'm really sorry. I had no idea. I thought SP had been putting these through. Apparently, he hasn't been putting these through. She says, don't worry about it, Joe. We'll make an exception this time. I said, and from now on, you can't do this ever again. I'm like, well, thank you, Svetlana. That's fantastic. And she says, what's the business purpose of this meeting? I said, I don't know, Svetlana. Donna's taking notes now, right? I don't know what the business purpose of the meeting was. We drank an awful lot. And she said, all right, it's faculty recruiting. I'm kidding, Donna. You start looking, see these $10,000 accounting faculty. You guys didn't hire anybody that year. So first of all, I think this is a wonderful story explaining my relation with Svetlana. She knows the rules, she tells you the rules, and then she says, okay, let's try to, she realizes you make mistakes with the rules. She says, we'll try to be compassionate, help you out, and make sure that you follow the rules in the future. So thank you very much for Svetlana for indulging me. So now I want to fast forward 6 years later. So that was when I was the head of the accounting group. I then get promoted to full professor, and SP says, well, guess what, Joe? You're the head of economics, finance, and accounting now. And again, I'm not sure whether this is a promotion or not, but I said, thank you very much. And now I have to work with Svetlana on a much more intimate basis where Svetlana and I see each other pretty much every day. Not every day, once a week. So we fast forward to about 10 days ago. And about early last week, Svetlana knocked on my door and said, Joe, I'm really sorry, but I have to tell you something. And she said, you know, I'm terminally ill and my time at Sloan is numbered. And when I went home that night, we have a tradition in my house every night. My family eats dinner together, and every night I say the same thing to my kids. I say, oh, tell me about your day. What was the best things that happened to you in your day, and what are the worst things that happened to you in your day? And at some point or another, my kids turned the tables on me, and they started saying, hey, Dad, tell us about your day at work today. And so last Monday, I came home, and I was very depressed. And my kids said, tell me about your day. And I said, you know, today Svetlana told me that this is somebody that I care an awful lot about, and she told me that she's not going to be working at MIT much in the future. And they could tell I was very upset about it, and we talked quite a bit. And they said, well, Dad, what can we do to cheer you up? And I said, you know what? So if you've ever been in my office, you'll see that there's constantly rotating pictures from my kids that go through on my wall. And I said, well, why don't you guys draw me a picture? Draw me 3 pictures and something with Svetlana's name in it that will make me happy when I look at those pictures. And so I have my 3 pictures from my kids, and I have to give you a little bit of context. You'll kind of get the. So my son is 8 years old, and for the last 2 years, every picture he's drawn for me has been a picture with a dad figure. It's a stick figure with some facial hair right around here, and you can clearly see it's a dad. And there's typically about 10 or 15 ninjas surrounding the dad, and they're generally doing pretty awful things to the dad for not giving one of the favorite ninjas enough video game time. So my son gave me a picture of a blue ninja. And I said, well, why blue? He said, well, Svetlana's a girl. And I was like, well, all of his ninjas are typically black, but girl ninjas. So I said, why not pink? He said, ninjas don't wear pink, Dad. So he gave me the blue ninja with the SS for Svetlana Sussman. I said, I think that really, if you've ever tried to get an expense report by Svetlana, you've seen the warrior come out in her, so I could say this will definitely remind me of Svetlana. My middle daughter, so if you look in my office, you will see, this is Sarah, you'll see pictures of turtles. And so she drew a picture of a turtle with SS in the middle of it. Now, in my family, my wife says I'm a study in the conservation of energy. I'm perhaps the slowest person on the face of the earth. And the comment always is, I say, yeah, I'm slow, but I'm like the turtle. Slow and steady wins the race. And I can't tell you how many times I've walked into Svetlana's office, anxious, concerned, and I say, Svetlana, the sky is falling. I got a problem. I need your help. And Svetlana's always in the, don't worry about it, Joe. I'll take care of it. Everything will be absolutely fine. So I think this embodies the relax, Joe. It'll all be okay. My oldest daughter made a heart, and it just has Sussman in the middle of it. And consistent with Andy's comments at the beginning of the evening, you know, one of the things we can say is that we all love Svetlana, and Svetlana, I certainly love you, and I'm going to miss working with you every day. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joe. Clearly, the accounting group has way more fun than the finance group, so we've got to work on that. Last but not least, we have John Cox, Nomura Professor of Finance and the former head of the finance group. John?
Well, my own grandkids are about the same age as Svetlana's grandson, so they could not provide me with any props. I'm on my own up here. I have known Svetlana for many years, but it wasn't until I became group head, and by the way, unlike Joe, I was absolutely sure this was not a good thing. But that's when Svetlana and I began meeting regularly. And of course, those meetings were always about problems. It was part of Svetlana's job to be dealing always with our unlimited needs and limited resources. But I really look forward to every one of those meetings. Svetlana's just that kind of person. No matter what the situation, she was always cheerful and always left her office in a good mood. And it was a pleasure to see Svetlana in action. I mean, she is a wonderful manager and somehow was able to solve almost every problem. And on those rare occasions when a problem couldn't be solved, you always knew that no stone was left unturned in trying. And we're not the only ones whose lives have been made better by Svetlana. She has worked tirelessly for years for the charitable Adamov Fund. Okay. This fund is named in honor of Svetlana's father, a famous Russian physicist who was blinded by a childhood illness, complications from measles, when he was only 2 years old. Okay. And overcoming all obstacles, he was for over 50 years a professor of theoretical physics at St. Petersburg State, the oldest university in Russia. He was an expert in quantum mechanics and published over 100 articles on that subject. Okay. The fund honors him and provides support for many blind people in Russia, such as voice recorders for students and walking canes for those who need them. And Svetlana's joy at being able to help these people was truly wonderful to see. And many of us have been inspired by Svetlana's constant good example. She has dealt with serious medical problems so gracefully that one would hardly even know. And somehow she has continued to do her job as ably as ever through all of this. And that takes much more will and determination than I've ever been able to muster. So I think I speak for all of us in saying, thank you, Svetlana, for everything.
So now we're going to hear from a couple of Svetlana's friends. First up, Erica Epstein. Erica, I apologize, I don't have a picture just of you. You're here with Mike, but here you are.
Actually, I don't really like to give a speech or anything of the sort. I really think this is a wonderful place, and this is a really great celebration that we're having for you. And I just have nothing else to say. Okay.
Okay. Next is Julie Sussman.
Is that in the right place? Okay. I'm going to say a little about how we came to know Svetlana and her family and how important they became to my family. First of all, although my name is Sussman, we are not related. Svetlana became Sussman when she married Harris, and I became Sussman when I married Jerry. And Jerry and Harris are not related, so that's...
As far as you know.
As far as we know, right. Okay. We met Harris and Svetlana because of my parents, and that's an interesting story involving my mother's and Harris's professions and the fact that Harris goes by the name Harris as opposed to Harry. My parents moved here from New York, from the New York area, where they had lived their whole lives in 1996 when they were in their late 70s. My mother, who had been a publishing professional, doing editing, book design, and production, created a book of quotations about racism, which she distributed for free for educational nonprofit use, a one-woman anti-racism project. At that time, Harris was doing diversity consulting. I hope I'm getting that right. And when he heard about the book, he called her about getting copies. When the caller introduced himself as Harris Sussman, She didn't even notice the Sussman, my married name, because she was so excited to talk to a Harris. Harris was her beloved older brother who died when I was a baby, and you don't often encounter the name Harris. Well, they talked, and since Harris was local, they decided they'd like to meet. So my parents and Harris and Svetlana and I met in neutral territory for dinner at Marino's in Cambridge. My parents and these other Sussmans hit it off so well that my parents invited them over to their house, and they became fast friends. You might think it odd that the best friends of a couple now in their 90s would be a couple of the same age as their kids. But my parents have always been vibrant, intellectually active, and young at heart, just like Harris and Svetlana. I'm not sure exactly what year this was, but the anti-racism book came off the press around Thanksgiving of 1998, which is easy for me to remember because it was my mother's 80th birthday. So the entry of the Sussmans into our lives was probably late in 1999 or maybe in 2000, I'm not sure. Harris and Svetlana have visited my parents almost weekly for over 10 years. They've talked, they've played ping pong, they've become like part of our family. This friendship has been so important to my parents after moving away from their old friends, and we're all very grateful to have all of your family connected to ours.
So at this point, we're going to go a little bit out of order, and we're going to ask Bruce Kamich from the MTA Educational Foundation to say a few words about Svetlana. Bruce is an adjunct professor of finance at Baruch College and also a past president of the MTA Educational Foundation. And Bruce came all the way up from New York to speak to us. So, Bruce?
Good evening. We had a board meeting in New York. I wasn't able to attend it, but with the ability to get emails, I wanted to read what was discussed at the board today from Cody Taffel, the new president of the foundation. On behalf of the board of directors of the MTA Educational Foundation, I would like to recognize Svetlana Sussman for efforts in support of our organization over the years. It is people like Svetlana who give their time selflessly to make an organization successful, and we have been blessed to have Svetlana serve the MTA EF. We rely on people like her who are passionate about technical analysis and are willing to turn that passion into supportive efforts that most times come without recognition. We have been saddened by the news about her health, and we felt it appropriate to honor her for her service to the foundation. Anyway, I brought this plaque up and a photograph in grateful recognition to Svetlana Sussman. Behind every great man is a woman. Behind every great foundation is a better woman. Thank you for 7 great years managing the Market Technicians Educational Foundation on behalf of the board of directors. So, thank you.
So thanks very much, Bruce. Now, for those of you who don't know what the MTA EF is, I'm going to explain all of that in just a few minutes. I want to turn now to a couple of speakers who are going to be speaking from the Laboratory for Financial Engineering. This is a research center that I started decades ago, and Svetlana came in August of 2000 as the administrator of the LFE. When we brought her on board, one of the roles that we had for her was to work with me in maintaining this research center. And from August 14, 2000 to April 12, 2006, a day that will live in infamy because she got promoted upstairs and no longer worked with me in the LFE, it was an incredible support for this research center. In fact, I would argue that more than me, she was the research center for reasons that I'll explain. So there are a number of projects that Svetlana worked on as part of the Laboratory for Financial Engineering, one of which was doing the construction that Donna referred to. That was around the time when we got space at 1 Broadway and we had to deal with contractors and architects. And it was an incredible amount of work, which Svetlana did cheerfully and with just incredible skill. We set up computer labs, servers, as well as Carol space for students. But really, it was the research program that Svetlana excelled in supporting. there are a number of research projects that went on during the years, including a major collaboration with Bank of America and the Media Lab, where we got terabytes of data on consumer credit. This was the first real big data project that was done here, certainly at Sloan and the Media Lab. And Svetlana helped in negotiating the data licensing agreements. Those of you who've dealt with data licensing issues, you know what I'm talking about when I tell you it was really complex. But her skill, but more importantly, her grace under pressure allowed us to be able to conclude successfully these negotiations in a record 6 months with this Bank of America. At the same time, we were working on a number of other projects, hedge funds and systemic risk, the adaptive markets hypothesis, which Svetlana was really gracious about reading and critiquing early on. But where I think she made some incredible contributions was on the teaching side. Because at the same time that we were working on these research initiatives, we had also established a relationship with Merrill Lynch. And one of the parts of that relationship was creating a program, a financial technology option, where we would give students in EECS a certificate. And Deborah Luchanan ended up running that program very successfully. But before that program got off the ground, Svetlana helped me to put together the proposal to organize it. Also, many of you probably don't realize that around that same time, we put in a proposal for a new degree program at Sloan. The degree program is called the MPhil. And Svetlana worked with me and Deborah Luchanan to put together the budget for that proposal and was able to get that done in record time. And finally, right around that time, 2003, 2004, we engaged in one of the many MBA core redesigns, which I've been a part of. And one of the aspects was dealing with something called the First Year Challenge, which is now the integrative exercise with Walmart. Svetlana was critical to that. She attended every single one of those planning meetings and ultimately helped me to launch that First Year Challenge. You probably don't even remember that. It's been a long time. But I want to mention one final aspect and then talk a bit about, introduce the two other speakers who are going to talk about Svetlana's contributions. And that is that around that time, I also began doing some work with traders, professional securities traders. And there were a number of projects, one of which involved technical analysis, the idea of looking at patterns, geometrical shapes in the price data, like head and shoulders and so on. And most of my colleagues were quite scandalized by this because people have said that technical analysis is to financial analysis what astrology is to astronomy. And there's a certain element of truth to that given the history of technical analysis. But it was actually quite an important aspect of certain parts of the financial industry, as Bruce and others can attest. Svetlana worked tirelessly with Mike Epstein, Erica's husband, who was a research affiliate of the LFE, to focus on all sorts of aspects of technical analysis, including interviewing technical analysis experts. And a student who you'll be hearing from, a former student, Yasmina Hasan-Hadjic, worked closely with Svetlana to deal with all of these individuals. At the same time, we are also wiring up traders and measuring their physiological characteristics. So here's an example of a trader at the Boston Stock Exchange where we were measuring their physiological responses while they were trading. And here is Svetlana with a student, Dmitry Repin, who was working on doing that wiring. The reason I mention that is because I don't know how many of you have dealt with traders, but one of the things that you'll know quickly about them is that they don't suffer fools gladly. They're extremely well paid, very, very short attention span, and they can be very, very difficult to work with. Somehow, Svetlana was able to charm all of these traders. And so they were able to work with her in ways that I've never seen them work with any other group of individuals. And I knew something strange was going on when one day I got a phone call from one of these traders asking to speak to Svetlana. And I said, oh, well, can I take a message or can I help you? And they said, actually, no, it's personal. Now, that, I think, sums up Svetlana's approach to all of this. It's personal for her. She has made tremendous contributions to my research. If you look at my research papers, during that period of time, every single one of them acknowledges Svetlana in the acknowledgments. But more importantly, she created an atmosphere at the Laboratory for Financial Engineering where students felt like that they were being cared for. She was a surrogate mom to virtually all of the students there. And here's a photograph of all of them at a particular point in time. There are many of them that she dealt with, and she dealt with them in ways that, well, you'll hear about. So there are two students, former students, that wanted to say a few words. One of whom is not here with us today, Katie Kaminsky, is a former student who's now a lecturer at Stockholm School of Economics. And she asked if she could give remarks via video. So we have a little video clip that I have put together from her emails. Let me just play that now.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'm sorry I can't be there tonight to be with all of you. So I'm sending this video in my stead. So when I first started thinking about what I wanted to say to Svetlana, I really started reminiscing on all the fantastic experiences that we had together and how we grew as a group, all of us. And essentially, when I thought about what event is the best, there were so many. I mean, there was graduations, there were preparations for weddings for Mila, there were lunches, there were discussions, and oftentimes some of the best moments were just a casual conversation with a friend. Now, when I think about Svetlana, the three things that I find so amazing about her is that you are a leader. You lead people. You're a mentor. But most of all, you're also a very compassionate friend and colleague. So putting these all together, there were so many moments where we as young, perhaps naive, perhaps silly graduate students, we could always turn to you because Svetlana, you are the kind of person who gets things right. One of the things I always was so amazed by you about was that you expected excellence and you delivered it. So by doing this, you set a great example for all of us. You taught us how to really do a great job at what we do. Whether it was a comma on a syllabus down to properly handling a complex situation, you had the answers. And I really always appreciated and always do appreciate this characteristic about you. So because of all this, putting that together, I want to thank you for your service to the great institution of MIT. Thank you for leading by exquisite example. Thank you for mentoring. Thank you, most of all, for being a great friend. Now, lastly, my father has often told me that in life, Katie, you have your family of chance and your family of choice. And I am so happy to have you in my family of choice.
I think I'm going to have to send her the bear. And second, we have Yasmina Hasan-Hadjic, a former PhD student from ECS, who's now got her PhD and a co-author of mine and has written a number of papers and books with me, and now she's a PhD student in economics at BU. Yasmina?
So when I was a student at the LFE, we used to call Svetlana our LFE mother. And Svetlana, you truly have been that to us. I'll never forget when I used to study long hours for my qualifying exams. I would close myself in the little conference room over at the LFE. And on many days, Svetlana would be the only person I would see. And that's because she would actually come periodically, specifically to check on me. And she would encourage me to take a break, to go for a walk or a swim. And she would explain to me that this would only be beneficial. When I was traveling for projects, I would bring my receipts to Svetlana for reimbursement. And Svetlana would look at these receipts and she would realize that I was eating junk food at cheap places. And she would insist the next time I find a better place and eat a decent, more expensive meal. It was Svetlana who helped me build a good working relationship with Andrew. She would always tell me to make sure to keep Andrew in the loop of what I was doing and to meet with him regularly, even if I thought I wasn't quite ready. And she actually made sure this happened by putting me on his regular schedule without even checking with me.
Or me.
Thank you, Svetlana, for your precious advice. And after we graduated, Svetlana made sure we all stayed in touch. Once, when my friend Katie was in town, she realized how disorganized we were to actually get together, and she set up a reunion for us at her house. And she did this on many other occasions. And you know, Svetlana, these were actually the only times many of us had a chance to see each other again. And also, I've always been impressed by how many things Svetlana managed to do. And for example, during the time I've known her, she ran a humanitarian organization to help blind students in Russia. She was taking a PhD-level science class at MIT. She actively participated in our LFE seminars, always asking questions. She taught Russian as a second language. And she managed the finances of the educational foundation of the MTA. And she did all this while managing a lab at MIT. And not just any lab, Andrew's lab. So Svetlana, you truly set an example of kindness and productivity for all of us. I think of you always.
Okay, we're going to take a break for dessert, and then we'll conclude with final comments and open remarks from the audience. Well, let's reconvene now for the final portion of tonight's program, which are open remarks. And to get us started, S.P. Kathari, Associate Dean for the Sloan School, will say a few words.
Svetlana, I love you. I joined MIT in 1999, about the same time Svetlana did. She was with LFE for the first several years, and thereafter, I had the privilege, as Joe was saying, how he was being appointed group head and so on and so forth. I had the same privilege, and it was in that context that I started working with Svetlana. And in fact, it was very fortuitous that around 2006, when I became area head, at that time, there was some bad patch for a while. But I got lucky when Svetlana steadied the ship by joining as the area head, area officer. And so I'm always grateful, because then I really didn't have to worry too much about the administration side, because it was in the capable hands of Svetlana. So we have been working on and off while I have been here or away, but still have been working with Svetlana, and it has been quite a privilege. Transitions are inevitable, and we are witnessing one of those transitions. And Svetlana is not going to be seen on the campus on a regular basis. But what I want to assure her that her spirit, her work ethic, her memories, they will linger far longer. Okay. And to memorialize that, an arts project has been commissioned. and it would be in E60 in the Dean Suite, so that she will continue to inspire us. And Svetlana will continue to make us smile, as she always has done. Svetlana, we are most grateful for everything you have done. And I want to assure you that your good work would be remembered for a long time. Thank you, and I do love you.
Thank you, SP. Let me mention that the Arts Project is going to have a place where we can put the names of longtime employees of Sloan, including Svetlana, but others as well. And I want to thank Pam Liu, Joe Weber, and others for making that happen. Other comments from the audience? Yes.
So I have no MIT connection with Svetlana and Harris, but I'm the director of the Russian American Cultural Center at Russia Wharf in Boston, and I met Harris first, and through Harris I would send gifts to Russia, to my Russian soul sister, Flora. And this was when they were courting, Harris and Svetlana were courting. And then when I would go to Russia, I would take things to Svetlana. So you know what period of time I'm talking about in terms of Russian-American connections. So I know I would not separate Svetlana from Harris. I would say always their two names together because I think they are the perfect combination of American and Russian. And they have also helped a lot of other Russian-American couples who have married over the years. I think at one time you had a group that would come to your house and you would help them through the difficult points. So I was struck by this remark that Svetlana was working on some visa problems. And so I thought, well, the Russian Center could certainly, if it's talking about visa cards, is she talking about working on visa MasterCards, or is she talking about visa, documents to get into the country? So I brought with me a book that's called To the Piers of the English Embankment. And I remember, it's a wonderful book about the place in St. Petersburg where the Ropes of Ropes and Gray lived, where Whistler's father, the Whistler family lived, and where Svetlana's house was. So I don't know how many of you know how she was brought up in St. Petersburg, Russia. She comes by so many wonderful Russian characteristics, which I want to emphasize because most people will say that the Russians don't do anything really well. But if you look at Svetlana, and when I was first introduced to things Russian, we would always say the Russians never go from point A to point B. It's not a straight line for Russians. They always объехать, обойти, always go around things. They don't know what a straight line is, when Russians are doing anything. And also I used to say, if you want to know what's like, life is like living in Russia, imagine living in the registry of motor vehicles 24 hours a day. That's what you have to deal with in Russia. So Svetlana comes by all these skills. She comes by all these skills from Russia. You have to give Russia credit for some of what Svetlana is. I know that Sloan has done a lot of things for her, but I think Russia has done a lot of things for her. And Harris was really, he was just, so special in seeing all these qualities in her. And so the one quality that I don't know anything about her administrative skills and any of the things that you all have talked about, but one of the qualities I do know about her that is so impressive, and it's her commitment, that she has such a commitment to her family. She has such a commitment to whatever she's involved with the Adama Fund, with her, her father's heritage, that she has committed herself to whatever she is important to her. And I can see from what all of you have said how important her sense of commitment is to you all here. And I want to say that that's been really important to me in my trying to emphasize the positive things in Russian-American relationships. And I think that Harris and Svetlana are good examples of what Russians and Americans can do when they when they are committed to it, the way Svetlana is committed to it. So if you all want to see where her father and where she grew up, I have this book on the English embankment, and it's a really, so that I know them just as young people. I don't know them the way you all know them, but I certainly appreciate them.
Stu?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Svetlana's experience in Russia, because after the fall of communism in Eastern Europe and then Russia, MIT was the world's largest remaining centrally planned economy. And it would take somebody like Svetlana to find her way around it and get things done. But that's not the real reason I stood up. I wanted to say something about Svetlana you probably don't know. I am the only person on the MIT payroll who ever took Svetlana out for a date. My wife was out of town. And I had two good tickets for a Boston Symphony concert at Symphony Hall. And so I asked Svetlana to go whether she'd go with me. And by gosh, she accepted. So we met at Symphony Hall, and it was a good concert. I bought her a glass of wine at the intermission. We listened to the rest of the concert. I even took her home in my fancy car. But I did not attempt to kiss her goodnight. And I just wanted to mention that because there's so much about Svetlana so much that she has accomplished at MIT, that one forgets what a sophisticated and charming person she is outside of MIT. So Harris has been very lucky. Thank you.
I really hope the head of HR is not here tonight. Okay. Anybody else like to say a few words? Margaret?
So like all of you, I'm a big Svetlana fan. She gets things done, and I always think of her in motion, and yet it's not with stress. She somehow manages to have a whoosh by you, but it's not of stress, it's of this calmness that then just blankets whoever she's going by with peace and warmth. And I thank you for that, Svetlana. And maybe it's from her kindness. She's so sincere. She really, as so many people have mentioned, she cares, and she cares about and she loves us all. And she really has motherly care for all of us, and that comes across. And I think that's where, even in very brief interactions, she uplifts people. So thank you. I love your shining smile. What the other people have mentioned, that always leaves me smiling. So thank you for that too. And Svetlana has always been so thoughtful to remember us in the dean's office when there are EF&A luncheons or goodbye parties for people departing. And I loved going to those, not just for the amazing desserts you guys somehow always seem to have on hand, but it really was truly remarkable, the community and camaraderie that I felt privileged to witness when it was like I was coming into this cocoon of support and teamwork and love, and I could see that every time, Svetlana, and I knew that you not only hired an amazing staff to deliver that to one another, but that you were fostering and nurturing that yourself, so thank you. It's really been a marvel. I mean, I've truly wondered outside of MIT in my off moments about your leadership and your management skills, because it was so striking to me what I witnessed over there again and again, and the humanity and compassion and love that you give to those around you. And so you really fostered not just a group, but
it was like this warm family that I love visiting every time. So, and her words about those departing, the speech, the beautiful, I don't know if you guys have heard her eloquent speeches that she gave. I was always struck with her speech making and the true care she expressed to those leaving. And this always touched my heart, and it's just beautiful to see. So. And I wasn't one of those fortunate to work directly with you every day, but I was blessed to interact on some tasks, such as these rush visa letters, and Svetlana always made you feel like you were the star just for helping out even a little bit, and she just was so generous with her appreciation. She also was very gracious with the dumb questions. It's funny that Joe mentioned about the alcohol, because as I was just learning expense reports, she answered very graciously with just a little smiley face. No, we do not reimburse for alcohol that's not with a meal. So, and a little smiley face. And thank you, too, for always including us in your son's amazing musical performances and the fundraisers that were in honor of your father and help people across the world. Your life truly is a beautiful and inspiring example of excellence yourself, of inspiring and guiding and leading others to excellence, and of dedication to family. Family at home, family right here at work, and family that you created by loving them across the world to bring the different things like the canes and the different visual aids, and your heart is so big and it's so beautiful. So you're a shining star, Svetlana, and I applaud you, and I'm so grateful for the warmth of your light in my life. I love you, and I thank you, and God bless you and your family.
We are going to have a few words from Leo, and then a final concluding performance before we say goodnight. While Leo is setting up and getting ready to say a few words, let me conclude also by saying thank you to all of you for coming and making this a possibility. Particularly, I want to thank Kelly Nixon, Patsy Thompson, and all of the staff for putting this together in short order. It's wonderful, wonderful to see that happen so quickly. And thank you to Leo and Mashit and Tigran for being extremely cooperative, and Harris. Thank you for giving us a chance to celebrate with you. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Andrew. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to speak or what I would say exactly, but well, I want to start by thanking Andrew for organizing this, because it was his initiative to bring you all together to I grew up with my mother, so I know her before you all. And I mean, the first 18 years, obviously, I lived with her, and the last, well, close to 18, I haven't. But we were always very close. But obviously, I left home. It sounds dramatic, left home. But I mean, I went to college and haven't lived at home since I was 18. But from the distance, I always worried a little, how she's doing, and it's a new culture, new environment, and when I lived at home, obviously, I knew at least I was around as family, and of course Harris, but from the old guys, and being away, I wasn't sure if she was going to be able to find a community or make friends in a new place, or how she was going to feel, or have close people, because I knew that in Russia she had some really close friends. And well, I think it wasn't really until this event that I realized quite how many people care about her and how close you all are. It's very moving, and I'm proud of her for being able to figure out the system and grow in it and befriend all of you. And so but I feel better if I play instead of talking. The violins also get emotional. But of course, I'm also really grateful that Anna is able to play with me tonight, because I had a whole list of pianists that I was supposed to call and see if they were available, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it because it's such a personal event. I wanted, couldn't be just any pianist. So thanks, Anna.
Again, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Svetlana. Love you, and good night.